In today's video, we are dealing with neuron. As we know, neuron is the functional and structural unit of neural system, and it is divided into three parts that are cell body. This is a cell body, okay, and these are the dendrites. Dendrites, which are actually the branches emerging from the cell body, okay. And these red dots, actually, what are these? These are some granular bodies. And in the cell body, there is this matrix is known as cytoplasm, as all other cells. And in the case of axon, this cytoplasm is known as the exoplasm, okay. Now these dendrites and the cell body contain some red dots, which are actually granular bodies. These granular bodies are known as Nissal's granules. And what is the role of Nissal's granules? They are attached with the ribosomes, and as you know, ribosomes are responsible for the protein synthesis, okay. So the process of protein synthesis is done by the Nissal's granules. The associated ribosomes, which are attached to the Nissal's granules, are responsible for the protein synthesis, and these proteins are helpful in the conduction of impulses, or you can say signals, from the dendrites to the axon, okay. So the main three parts are the dendrites, the cell body, and the axon. As all the other cells, it also has a nucleus, centrally placed nucleus in the cell body, and a long branch like structure, which is a long fiber emerging from one side, is the axon. And axon is surrounded by some cells which are known as Schwann cells. And if these Schwann cells secrete some myelin is actually a lipid rich layer. So if Schwann cells secrete myelin around the axon is termed as myelinated. If this myelination is not present and it's absent, then the neuron is known as unmyelinated, okay. And the gaps in between the myelin sheaths, like this is a myelin sheath and this is a myelin sheath, and this gap is known as the node of Ranvier. And these Schwann cells, as these are also cells, so these has some nucleus, okay. Their nucleus are placed sideways. And in addition to these all things, we have the endings like axon endings, and axon endings are like this. So axon terminal, and it terminates into a knob like structure which is known as synaptic knob. Synaptic knobs contain what? Synaptic vesicles, okay. So synaptic vesicles, which contain actually what? Chemical messengers, chemical substance, you can say chemical substance or chemical messengers, which are actually what? Neurotransmitters. So when the signal reach the axon terminal and the synaptic knob, they are released from the synaptic knob in the form of vesicles. In the vesicles, there are neurotransmitters, which are actually chemical messengers. They help in the transmission of signals from one axon to the other axon, or you can say one axon to the neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic cleft, or you can say the gap, which is known as a synapses, okay. Synapses is actually composed of the presynaptic and the postsynaptic membrane, and the space between them, which is known as the synaptic cleft. So okay, so these all three contribute to the formation of a synapses, okay. So the transmission of impulses from one neuron to another neuron is through the synapse, and where the role of these neurotransmitters are released from one neuron ending and are get attached to the receptors present on the postsynaptic membrane, or you can say muscle end plate, or you can say neuromuscular junction, where they act with the the receptors like neurotransmitter receptors. And on the binding of these neurotransmitters with their respective receptors, they leads to the opening of some ion channels, which actually are important for the conduction of impulse. As the ion channel, as the ion gradient changes, the conduction of impulses is possible, okay. So there are we also have unmyelinated nerve fibers, in which these myelin sheaths are absent but Schwann cells are present, okay. So where are these myelinated axons are present? Myelinated axons are present in the cerebral hemisphere, like cerebral cortex and the spinal cord, okay. So in the CNS region mainly. And what about the unmyelinated neurons? Unmyelinated neurons are present in the peripheral nervous system, like your autonomous nervous system, your somatic nervous system and all, okay. Now let's talk about some neuron types. It depends on the number of dendrites and axons present on the cell. Like if the number of dendrites are more than 2 you can say two or more than two, and there is axon is always present in a neuron. Okay, so if the number of dendrites more than two, then the neuron is said to be a multipolar, as I written in the bottom, the multipolar. So this is a diagram of a multipolar one, as it has multiple dendrites and axon. Okay, so it's a multipolar, and where we find these multipolar neurons in the cerebral hemisphere, you can say cortex. Okay, so there are some bipolar neurons also, which are present in our retina. Okay, eye of retina of eye. Okay, and we have unipolar also, in which there is only axon, no dendrites. Okay, so these are present at the embryonic stage of our life. Bipolar means one dendrite only and one axon. Okay, so that's bipolar, and this is present in the retina of eye. Okay, so this is all about neuron, as this is important structure. Okay,